As we look at these verses 1 through 10, there are three main headings I want to set before you. First, what we were in verses 1 through 3. And then second, what God did in verses 4 through 6. And then finally, why God did it in verses 7 through 10. So let's begin in verse 1, what we were. Paul begins by reminding the believers in Ephesus what they once were before their conversion, and he takes them on a trip to the morgue. It's not a pretty viewing. He begins in verse 1, and you were dead in your trespasses and sins. The you refers to all the believers in Ephesus, all the believers here tonight who were chosen before the foundation of the world, who were redeemed by the Lord Jesus Christ. You were dead. To be dead here refers not to physical death, it refers to spiritual death, that we were a spiritual corpse. We were spiritually lifeless. We were unable to do anything to save ourselves. We were unable to hear the truth. We were unable to see the truth. We were unable to desire the truth. We were unable to respond to the truth. We were as dead could be. I remember the day when I was in seminary and my whole theology came crashing down with one question. I remember where I was seated in class and the professor was lecturing on the preaching of George Whitefield. And he asked this one question as it related to the spiritual state of those to whom Whitefield was preaching that day. The question was, what can a dead man do? And there was just utter silence. And I kept waiting for one of my classmates to answer the question until finally a student on the back row said, stink. That's all a dead man can do. A dead man cannot work. A dead man cannot believe. A dead man can do nothing to commend himself to God. A dead man cannot desire. A dead man cannot take steps of faith. A dead man has zero life within himself to hear, to see, or to respond to the gospel of Jesus Christ. Paul says to the believers there in Ephesus that you were dead. He says in your trespasses and sins. Both those words are in the plural. Represents the mountain of sins that each one of them had committed. Trespasses refer to false steps away from the path that you are to take. And sins refer to missing the mark and falling short of the standard that God has. And he says, in which you formerly walked. Your entire life was a life that was submerged in sin. Your entire life, you were drowning in an ocean of sin. And every step of your life, as you carried out your daily activities, it was step by step by step by step of sin. Every step of your life in the walk that you once lived, it was a step of sin and transgression against God.